Good morning, good afternoon, dear participants and speakers. A very warm welcome to the third webinar under the Water and Development Partnership Program Phase 2, the DUPC2 webinar series. Today, we are very pleased to cover the topic of wastewater treatment and reuse, creating resources for agriculture and addressing water scarcity. My name is Long Huang, the Program Manager from TheWaterChannel. My pleasure to welcome all of you to our event of today. To open our webinar, I would like to invite Dr. Peter van der Steen, Associate Professor of Environmental Technology at the IHE Delft Institute for Water Education, to say a few words of welcome. The floor is yours, dear Peter.
Thank you, Long, for your introduction. Yes, I would like to welcome all of you, wherever you are in the world, to this seminar. We heard that there is a large number of participants, and the chance that you are from a water-scarce country is, I would say, rather high. And unfortunately, is also that chance is also increasing, because we all know that water scarcity is a worldwide problem. It is getting more difficult, both on the supply side, with climate change, but also on the demand side with growing populations, growing demands also in agriculture. And that is one of the things we would like to address in this seminar. I'm looking forward to the presentations and the discussion, and I hope it will be very enjoyable and interesting for you as well.
Thank you very much, Peter. To continue, I would like to briefly introduce our speaker and a very interesting program of the coming 1 hour. Today, we have 3 short presentations of 10 minutes each, followed by a panel discussion, all centered around the question of how can we use wastewater treatment and reuse to support crop production and to address water scarcity. We will start with the presentation by Dr. Hadeel Hosni from the IHE Delft Institute for Water Education. She will share insights about drivers, opportunities, and constraints of reuse of treated wastewater in irrigated agriculture. Next, we will have Dr. Luna Al-Hadidi, the Director of Water and Soil Directorate at the National Agriculture Research Center, NARC. She will talk about non-conventional water treatment and reuse. After that, we will hear the last presentation by Dr. Peter van der Steen on the topic of wastewater treatment and reuse, the potential and the pathway to reach scale. Each presentation will take about 10 minutes. And after that, we move on to the Q&A and the panel discussion. Today, we are very pleased to have Mr. Mohamed Tafik from Wageningen University and from the IMI-MENA region to join us as convener. We thank our speakers and the conveners for taking time and joining us today. And once again, I would like to warmly welcome also our participants from different places of the world. Some of you might have noticed that today we missed Dr. Bilgehan Nas. Unfortunately, he cannot join us today for health reasons, and we wish him a very fast recovery. We look forward to a very interactive discussion and encourage you to post the questions and the remark to our speakers by typing in the chat box. You can also use the Q&A function in Zoom to post questions. We'll be collecting the questions and send it to our convener, Mohamed, and then he will address that to our speakers. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Hadeel Hosni to give the first talk. Please go ahead, dear Hadeel.
Thank you, Long, for the nice introduction. I'll share my screen. Let me share the screen itself. Okay, can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay, nice. So, hello, everybody. My name is Hadeel Hosni. I'm delighted to be here with you today as a postdoc researcher at IHE Delft Institute. I've been working with wastewater treatment, resources management, and reuse of treated wastewater in agriculture. Today, I would like to discuss the drivers, opportunities, and constraints of reusing the treated wastewater in irrigated agriculture. So let's dive into this subject. As we all know, water is an abundant resource on our planet, covering approximately 71% of the Earth's surface. However, despite its vast presence, it is important to note that not all water resources are suitable for usage. Let's take a closer look at global water resources. So, as you can see here, that these are key figures from the World Bank about the available water resources. The total water supply globally account for 3,700 billion cubic meters per year. This includes surface water bodies, groundwater resources, and other reservoirs and resources. Water consumption breakdown is into four sections, and I would say three main sections. So first, the domestic, which account to around 8% of the total water supply. When we say domestic usage, we mean the domestic purposes, including drinking, sanitation, and household needs, while 70% of the total water supply go for agriculture usage. These agriculture activities is irrigation, crop cultivation, and livestock, and around 22% of the total water supply is dedicated to industrial processes, manufacturing, and energy production. Less than 1% of the total water supply lost through evapotranspiration. As you know, water evaporates from soil, plants, and other surfaces. In fact, the total demand is 4,600 billion cubic meter, which exceeding supply, and accordingly, there is imbalance in water budget with total deficit of 900 billion cubic meter per year. As a result, many regions face shortage or deficits, where the demand, surpasses the sustainable supply, posing significant challenges for water management and sustainability efforts. The water scarcity challenges in global water resource led to various reactions from countries, decision makers, and community. In response to water shortage, the first thing they saw that they can manage, that they increase the intensity of water withdrawal. So they need water, so they increase the withdrawal from different water resources. This really pushed the limits of sustainability. This trend is depicted in a global overview of regions where water withdrawal exceeds recharge rate, as you can see from this figure, that the withdrawal rate is unsustainable and exceeding the recharge rate in some countries, exceeding maybe by 100-fold. As we analyze the population trends and their implication for resources limitation, it becomes evident that the world population size experiencing a remarkable increase. According to estimates and projections, the global population has reached approximately 8 billion people at the present of this year, 2023. This exponential growth poses significant challenges in terms of resource availability and sustainability, putting more pressure on water resources. So, to accommodate the needs of growing population, agriculture practices and activities for sure have evolved to maximize productivity. This includes the use of irrigation system, fertilizers, and advanced farming techniques. With these practices have increased food production, they also require additional amount of water, putting more pressure on the water resource. Next to these pressures, there is also the projected impacts of the climate change. The climate change on water resource are a cause for concern for all of us. As we assess the future challenges we may face, climate change is expected to bring about significant change to our hydrological system, affecting water availability and also suitability. So some of the main consequences of climate change that we may all know, the increases in temperature, shifts in precipitation rates, and increased frequency of flooding and droughts. Adding to these pressures come the digital revolutions. The rapid advancement of the digital revolution and the growth of the industrial sector have also placed additional pressure on our already limited water resource. As we rely more on data, centers, cloud computing, and technological infrastructure, the demand for water in these operations has increased significantly. One example that highlights the water consumption associated with digital services is the Google's data center. In 2021 alone, Google utilized over 4 billion gallons of water in its data centers worldwide. Out of this amount, approximately 3.3 billion gallons were consumed in the United States, while the remaining less than 1 million gallons were consumed in the rest of the world. So coming back again on to our global water resource chart, and after addressing, these pressures and challenges, it is visible for everyone that we have to find non-conventional, sustainable, renewable water resource. And one of these resources could be the reuse of treated wastewater in the mega consumer sector, which is the agriculture, as we face a growing demands for water. So let's see some trends of reusing the treated wastewater in agriculture. This figure is combining both the reuse of untreated and diluted water and treated wastewater. As you can see, you can find different countries, adopting the use of treated wastewater in agriculture. And unfortunately, there is some, I would say, illegal practices of reusing the raw wastewater or primarily treated wastewater. These countries show the growing acceptance and implementation of reuse strategies across different nations, regions, and countries. So the question comes now, what wastewater or treated wastewater bring for us? What are the opportunities of reusing the treated wastewater in agriculture? First, it alleviates the water scarcity by providing non-conventional renewable resource. Also, most of the wastewater treatment plants are secondary treatment plants, which I would say provide kind of sufficient quality of treated wastewater depending on the type of crop and the reuse purposes. Also, there is a combined economic value where we combine the treatment with producing a crop. So maximize each drop of water by, providing more crops. Also, we have some opportunities related with increase the availability of irrigation water resources, reduce the fertilizer as the treated wastewater brings some nutrients, which reduce the dependence on fertilizers, especially the chemical one, increase crop yield, and also agriculture provide kind of tertiary treatment and for the provided water. While the opportunities of expanding reuse could be significant, as we see, there are also constraints of reusing the treated wastewater in agriculture related to social and cultural norms and values, also differences between the supply and demand of the effluent. So sometimes maybe the provided and the supply treated wastewater is not sufficient for the demand for the agriculture practice or needs. Also, there is some human, animal, environmental hazards if the treated wastewater is not treated properly. There is also some constraints with the operation in the irrigation system and the irrigation technique itself. So also we have some limitations and constraints with the crop productivity and some others related to the soil. I would also say that there is a very emerging concern globally about the emerging contaminants accumulation in the treated wastewater, which accumulated in consequence to the soil, plant, humans, and impact the human and the environment a lot. So there is a driver and there's an opportunity for finding non-conventional solution, but also there is a constraints that should be considered. I just would like to conclude my presentation with two key messages. The first one, that reuse of treated wastewater in irrigated agriculture is an interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach, which you can find the technical aspects, sanitation, agriculture techniques, fertilizers, quality. There is a policy, there is a social acceptance, there is an economic value, which is maximizing the the crop per drop of water. There's an institutional regularity. There is an international national agenda. There is a lot of aspects to be considered. So making a decision for using the treated wastewater, it is not an easy decision. It is really a complicated, I would say, decision. The second key message I would like to say that it is crucial for decision makers, for policy makers, for community, for everyone involved with, on the reuse sector scheme, to recognize the value of treated wastewater and also to address the constraints and challenges. We are all happy that we may find a non-conventional, sustainable, renewable resource like the treated wastewater, but we need to make sure that this is technically reliable and profitable for farmers, the main users. So it requires strong links between central administration and local stakeholders to analyze all of existing practices and testing new adaptive management arrangements. So like that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you all for your attention. And by working together, we can bring more sustainable future for the coming generation. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hadiol, for your interesting presentation. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Luna Al-Hadidi from the NAC Center to give her presentation. Please go ahead, Dr. Luna.
Thank you. Let me share the screen. Now you can see my screen, yeah?
Yes, perfect. Could you please put it on full screen?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you for the invitation to participate at this very important webinar. I would like to talk about the non-conventional water treatment and reuse, the NARC experience. Of course, you know that Jordan is considered the second water scarce country. Our per capita is very low. In a new strategy now, our renewable water resources became 61 meter cube per capita per year. This is the old number. Of course, the climate change have effect on all of our countries. And regarding work done, our reports show that we have a significant decrease of 1.2 millimeter per year, and increase in the air mean air temperature by 0.02 degree. Of course, in Jordan, to bridge the gap between the water resources, as we know, it's very scarce. The country has to utilize the non-conventional water resources, such as wastewater reuse. Of course, in Jordan, we use a high quantity of the treated, which is treated, the effluent. Around 91% of our treated wastewater is used directly or indirectly. Of course, in 2018, it was 150 million cubic meter, but in 2021, now it was 167 million cubic meter, to update the number. We have 33 central wastewater treatment plants, and we expect that in 2025 we reach 240 million cubic meter. With respect to the treatment, activated sludge treatment dominates around 60% of the treatment plants in Jordan, followed by other treatment options. Regarding the projects, in 1998, NARC began the reuse, treatment and reuse projects of treated wastewater and irrigation. So we, in our work, we covered different forage crops. We cover different filtration system. We cover different quality. And of course, the reports are available. Of course, the first experiments were to use the quality of treated wastewater on cut flowers. It was the first thing. And, you know, in the Jordanian standard, the cut flowers was not there. So according to our work for 6 years, we succeeded to include the cut flowers in the Jordanian standards at that time. And since that, the cut flowers category is there in the Jordanian standard. We tried to move in treatment options. We tested very low-cost technologies, high-tech technologies, membranes. Tried to modify or to improve the quality of the wastewater. We move from forages and other crops to cooked vegetables to treat or to check the effect of irrigation with this quality on the quality of these crops and the yield. And we work as NARC. We have a research station in the northern part of Jordan near Ramtha treatment plant, where we use the treated effluent for our experiments, beside the presence of the membranes that we use to modify the quality of the effluent to be tested for other crops. Of course, those are the different crops that we tested. Beside, also we test the industrial crops like sunflower, rapeseed, olive, because it is considered in the Jordanian standard as industrial crop. We hosted many delegates, many researchers from many countries and universities. This is the membrane technology that we already have. We have ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis membrane that modify the quality of treated wastewater with 8 meter cube per hour, the effluent rate or the flow rate of the system. Of course, after the research inside the pilot, we moved to research with farmers, and we try to let the farmers benefit from the options to modify their irrigation technologies and their agricultural practices. So we introduce many options like water tanks, irrigation systems to benefit those farmers to be used inside their farms. Also, we have a lot of projects dealing with grey water treatment and reuse and agriculture. All material is available upon request. Of course, we move as NARC to desalination of brackish water using the solar energy for the sake of irrigation, because the desalination in Jordan is used for drinking, but NARC began to do this work for irrigation. We install now up to 7 or 8 desalination systems with PV photovoltaic technologies at different farmers' field in Jordan. The capacity of these systems is 10 meter cube per hour with different technologies. We have reverse osmosis, we have nano, and we have also the capacity of deionization. So we are testing different desalination options for also the farmers. Also, we try to promote the sustainable irrigation management by giving many innovative technologies for farmers to be used in agriculture through an NACPC made the project called PROSEM. We try to, spread many innovative technologies related to modify the irrigation system, the efficiency, related to modify the rail irrigation requirements, and filtration with desalination system to modify the quality of the water used for irrigation. Those are the work plan. We will have more than 50 hectares with 300 farmers will benefit from this project. Also, my colleague has another project, which is like a brother and sister for PROSEM, also work on modification of the effluent quality of treated wastewater in Ramtha. And due or based on this project, we succeed to install tertiary treatment to modify the quality for farmers. We did water productivity under different irrigation system, and we provide 9 farmers with subsurface irrigation system. Of course, we worked with IHE in Valley Water project, and according to this and to the achievement of this project, NARC succeeded to have a new pilot research station in North Shune working on wastewater. Now we are managing this station, and we are doing some agricultural reuse projects there to convince farmers to switch to treated wastewater. Also, other projects try to spread water efficient innovative solutions for projects such Whisper project. Those are the technologies that are used. Some of them are finished, and some of them are ongoing. The project will finish at the end of this year. This is, I tried to give some information regarding the Jordanian standard, because we changed the standard to new one starting 2021. Also, just I would like you to know the price of the treated wastewater in Jordan. It is very modest price, and I provided a table with a different price based on the treatment and the technology of treatment used there. This is the Jordanian standard, will be provided in my presentation for who is interested. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Luna. I am sure your interesting presentation will be very well received by our audience. And if there is any further question or follow-up on the details, we are happy to connect you all to Dr. Luna after this webinar. Just for your information, we invite you all to share your remarks and questions in the chat box or in the Q&A function, and we will address them in the second part of the webinar. To move on with the program, I would like to invite Dr. Peter van der Steen to present on the potential and the pathway to reach scale with wastewater treatment and reuse. Please go ahead, Dr. Peter.
Yes, hello everyone again. I'm assuming that you can hear me well. Maybe you can confirm that.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about wastewater treatment and reuse, the potential and pathway to reach scale. And therefore, we need to know the key factors that are important to increase sustainable wastewater reuse. And I will focus on the Middle East. Throughout the project, throughout the presentation, I must say I will give a few examples from results from 2 DUPC2 projects that we carried out together with our partners, the Valley Water project in Jordan, and the Kidron Nar project in Palestine and Israel. But I also will put it in the wider scope of the region of the Middle East. And what you see here in this graph is for various countries, the rate of sewerage for wastewater collection, the rate of treatment, and the WRI, which stands for Water Reuse Index, which is the volume reused divided by the volume treated. So you see quite a large variation between countries. Countries like Israel and Jordan and Kuwait and Qatar have relatively high water reuse index. But on average, we clearly can say that there is still a large potential to increase wastewater reuse. It is then important, in my opinion, to realize that wastewater reuse or wastewater reclamation is only the 3rd step in a chain. which starts with wastewater collection, wastewater treatment, and maybe also wastewater storage. And only then we can reclaim or reuse the wastewater. It also means that it is important that there is sufficient investment in collection and treatment of wastewater. And in my opinion, these investments should be carried by the polluter pays principle, a very basic principle in environmental management, which is shown on this slide. Consumers, households, and businesses pay to government to treat their pollution or to remediate the environment to reduce environmental damage. And although it's not nice to pay to government, we all would like to pay less taxes. In terms of preventing pollution, it is hard to avoid. So in one of our projects, in this case in the town of Ubadiyah in Palestine on the West Bank, we introduced wastewater treatment in the town. And so we could experience, let's say, at the grassroots level, how difficult it is sometimes to convince citizens, to convince the municipal council to indeed invest in wastewater treatment to reduce the pollution. We learned from this 6 years project that it is really a long-term effort that is required to establish good cost recovery and also proper operation and maintenance. You see some slides there or some pictures in the middle of the slide which look problematic in terms of leakage, even some dangerous situation. And on the right side, you see a quite neat, well-maintained plant. And that is actually also the case in this project, that we were able to achieve that. And the picture on the left side, the involvement of the citizens and the municipal council, the mayor, you see him also in that picture, is extremely important for them. Now, you may wonder, why does he mention this polluter pays principle all the time? Why so much stress on that? Is it not possible to cover the cost for collection and treatment by the sale of treated wastewater to farmers? That would be nice. However, it is not the case, unfortunately. We can clearly see that from the cost of collection and treatment, which are typically 0.25 to $2 per cubic meter, whereas the tariff applied in the Middle East is between 0.02 and 0.3 $, roughly a factor 10 less. So this clearly shows you cannot, unfortunately, you cannot pay collection and treatment from wastewater reuse. So there we still need the investments from the polluters. Now this also raises the question, when we see that these tariffs for reclaimed water are so low, how do the tariffs for freshwater sources compare to the tariffs or the cost of providing treated wastewater to farmers? And how does that affect the demand for treated wastewater? If we want to go to scale, we need to make sure that the demand from the agricultural sector is increased. Now, just an example here, very simplified, 9 farmers, they can choose either freshwater or they can choose reclaimed wastewater. Yes, they have both options. Now, their willingness to pay, you see in this price demand curve, price on the y-axis, demand on the x-axis, and the higher the price, the lower the demand. The lower the price, the higher the demand, because at low prices, farmers do not have a strong incentive to be water efficient. In many cases, the government has fixed the price. So you see that here, and that also that determines then the demand. In reality, sometimes the amount of water that is present simply is limited. So you see here the quantity that can be supplied, and since the quantity is lower than the demand, there is scarcity. That is how economists look at this problem. Now, if we increase the price, that's what you see here, the demand goes down, and actually in this case, just in this example, there's an excess water supply because all the demand can be met and there's even water left. How does this model look at different water qualities? So we see now the same demand curve, but for fresh water. and at the government fixed price, this results in this demand. And in red, you see the same price demand curve, but now for reclaimed. Yes, and that price is lower because it has a lower value for the farmer. Now, if the government puts a price for reclaimed water, which is only marginally smaller than the fresh water, we see that all the demand can be met from the fresh water, and there will be no demand for the reclaimed water. Let me move this because I can't see the whole slide. Can I move that? Anything? Yes. Okay. And so the result is that there is no demand for reclaimed water because the fresh water can satisfy all the demand. Now, if the fresh water would be more expensive, so the difference between the price for fresh water and reclaimed water is larger, then we will see that the demand for fresh water goes down. And we need now to satisfy the original demand, we also need to have some reclaimed water. So as a result of this price, changing in price, the demand for reclaimed water has increased. And in fact, that is what you find in the literature and also in some of our projects, that reuse in the Middle East is not financially attractive in many cases due to the low tariffs for freshwater sources. As long as farmers have a choice between conventional freshwater, which is already very cheap, or reclaimed water, where they may have some doubts about quality, only when the price difference is significant, we are able to convince farmers to do so and to switch from freshwater to treated wastewater. And that is actually, Dr. Luna already mentioned this project taking place in Jordan, in the Jordan Valley, the northern part of it, where the government of Jordan wants that the treated wastewater from the city of Irbid is going to be reused for irrigation in the northern Jordan Valley, where most of the farmers grow citrus crops. So the farmers are very concerned about the effluent quality from the treatment plants. And so remember the chain approach. So the government is now also investing in improving the treatment plant so that the effluent quality gets better. And that will help, hopefully, to convince the farmers to make the switch from freshwater to reclaimed water. In our project, actually our partner NARC is also doing this by demonstrating, you see some pictures there, demonstrating that the treated wastewater can be used to irrigate. You see alfalfa there, but also citrus on the pictures. Yeah? So we want to demonstrate and to prove to the farmers that reuse is a feasible option. Now, there's also, my time is almost finished, I see, but I just want to make a few more comments. First of all, on planning. So this relation between the wastewater treatment and the reuse is very strong. And therefore, in planning wastewater treatment projects, the best thing is already to keep in mind that you want to reuse it. And that your standards that you want to achieve in the wastewater treatment plant are actually determined by the reuse purpose. Also, the location of the treatment plant is important. Some locations make reuse impossible. And so this integrated planning of the treatment plant and the reuse site is very important. There are quite a few examples where this is not the case, where the treatment plant is constructed first and only then the reuse plan is made many years later, and that is causing a lot of problems. Now, some governments choose a little bit more, strong or stronger approach, where they actually don't give any options to the farmers anymore. The government mixes the fresh water and the reclaimed wastewater themselves before it is distributed to the agricultural area. And in this case, it's one scenario, one strategy to go to scale, to increase the reuse and not be dependent on the economical considerations of the farmer. To be discussed if this is a good approach or not. The other approach is even more tough, let's say, and that means that you only supply reclaimed wastewater to the farmers. All fresh water will be used for other purposes, notably for the cities, for municipal use and for industry. Also a more tough approach to increase, to go to scale, to increase the reuse. Also maybe to discuss, especially in this last option, water quality aspects are crucial. There are technologies available on the market to make even drinking water out of wastewater, but they are often expensive. So at IHE and also with partners in Jordan, we are working on other treatment technologies that are cheaper, maybe using natural systems, maybe decentralized, to come up with better effluent quality, also with regard to emerging contaminants. Just one point also that we observed in our project is that unfortunately farmers, understandably, are not aware of the last scientific results. For instance, the reuse of wastewater for citrus and also the reuse of olive mill wastewater in literature has already been described that is perfectly fine in terms of feasibility. But many farms are not aware of that. Therefore, we still need maybe to demonstrate it. But it's good to keep in mind that in other countries or in other situations, feasibility of this reuse has already been demonstrated. Last, but certainly not least, is public acceptance. The public are hardly aware of the real cost of water supply, the real situation with water scarcity, and the broader water management context. And that is required for them to be more open to wastewater reuse, to understand better the seriousness of the situation. So it's a difficult message also to reduce subsidies. Of course, we should take care of those that can't afford it. Communication is key, clear messages that generate trust and safety of the reuse schemes. Then my conclusions. Well, I just mentioned communication and stakeholder involvement, absolutely key. The systems or chain approach is required. So collection, treatment, storage, and reuse should be designed in one go, I would say, because of the strong relations. Collection and treatment, in my opinion, to be paid by the polluters. And finally, and that is actually the most important message I would like to give in this presentation, tariff setting of reclaimed water relative to cost of fresh water is essential. So fresh water for farms in the Middle East is too cheap, and therefore forms a bottleneck for going to scale with wastewater reuse. Thank you very much for your attention. These are my references. I'll share those later. Back to you, Lon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter, for a very interesting presentation. I already see that there are quite some questions and some interest, for example, on the pricing, demand and supply relations. I'm sure we'll get back to that in the next part. So now let us move on to the second part of the webinar. The discussion will be moderated by Mr. Mohamed Taufik, a researcher in the field of policy analysis, institutional development and governance, with a particular focus on the water, wastewater sector and resource recovery and reuse. Taufik has more than 10 years of regional and international experience in the MENA region, Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Europe and Australia. Thank you very much for joining in and moderating this discussion. So please, over to you, Mohamed.
Thank you so much for all the speakers, all interesting presentations. We've received like more than 10 questions so far from the attendees, and we have actually these multi-layer questions, so they have more details also discussed. Besides some questions that we also would like to discuss with all the presenters. So let's start with the question that we have received from our attendees. Let's start with the first question to Dr. Hadil about this question says the secondary treatment technologies like activated sludge suffers for treatment and reuse. However, significant number of human pathogens live with the effluent? And do you consider it as a risk for farmers, consumers, and groundwater? And what are the additional barriers that comes before or after the treatment or the reuse to minimize this risk?
Yes, thank you, Mohammed, for the question. Indeed, the presence for the human pathogen in treated wastewater can pose a potential risk to farmers, consumers, and groundwater if not properly managed. While secondary treatment like the activated sludge, for instance, effective system to remove some portion of pollutants or significant portion of pollutants and organic matter, but they may not completely eliminate all the pathogens and micropollutants. So to minimize the risks associated with pathogens and fully remove the contaminants, I would say using tertiary treatment, implementing a tertiary treatment step after the secondary treatment. This can further enhance the removal of the pathogens and micropollutants. And advanced treatment technology like the ultraviolet disinfection, ozonation, or membrane filtration. I hope this answered. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would like to continue this line of question about the risk associated with treated wastewater use, and this time to Dr. Luna about wastewater treatment in Jordan. And the question says that do you have any research that you've conducted in Jordan to identify the risk of organic micropollutants, or as we say, emerging pollutants from pharmaceutical pesticides origin, and how this can affect those who are handling the treated water, like, for example, you mentioned farmers who grow cut flower and so on.
Regarding our work with the pharmaceuticals and other contaminants, we did not work yet. We have new projects now to deal with these contaminants. So we'll check the sake of these contaminants, even not on cut flowers. We'll choose edible crops, so we can check. But we have other colleagues work in some of their master theses on these pollutants in forages. And I have also other papers from neighboring countries regarding the analysis or the detection of these contaminants. In fact, in Jordan, we don't have this quality or these contaminants even specified in the standards. We could not find such this. I hope that we can go further and modify and have such efforts in detecting those contaminants.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that also the field of emerging pollutants in wastewater is now a hot issue, and many projects and initiatives are just tackling this topic. And also continuing this line of questions on pollution and contaminants related to wastewater. My question to Peter is the famous polluters pays concept. Now with this paradigm shift towards wastewater reuse, and we look at treated wastewater as a source of nutrient-rich water. And now if we ask polluters who like the origin of this high quality source to pay, then what about the beneficiaries who receive this nutrient-rich source of water? How this could be an equitable way? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. There's always a debate between, let's say, the citizens in the city, the polluters in this case, and the farmers. Who pays for what? And I don't know, you can have a very principled debate, but we can also try to be, let's say, practical. Then my suggestion would be is that the polluter or the citizens or the industry, they pay for the collection, first of all, and then also for the treatment, but then up to standards that are required for discharge, let's say. And so that is the basic treatment. But then there's additional treatment required to make the water fit for the use in agriculture. And I think that those treatment steps, it makes sense that farmers pay for that, because that is also, that is for their benefit mostly. And then I think the farmers should also pay for the distribution network to their fields. And so it's then a shared, hopefully equitable payment.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, one more round of questions. We start again from Dr. Hadil. So the question here is about how do we supply or organize or arrange the supply of treated wastewater to farmers? Do we have different methods to do that? And in case of like a proximity, like a distance or a gap between the place where the treated wastewater is generated and the place of reuse, how we can mend this gap. And also Peter also talked a little bit about this, that it comes at a planning stage, that we plan with reuse in our minds, but as we know, we have a lot of wastewater treatment stations that are already established without reuse in mind.
Yes, thank you for the question, Muhammad. I would say reuse is allocation specific. So when you are asking about how do we transfer the treated wastewater or how treated wastewater can be delivered to farmers, it is really depending on the location, the country, the context. So in MENA region, in two different countries in the same region, if I would say Egypt and Jordan, they are delivering the treated wastewater and reclaimed water through two different channels. So in Egypt, they deliver it through agricultural drainage. In Jordan, they have man-made canals like King Abdullah Canal, to deliver the reclaimed water to the farmers. So it is a location specific. We cannot have a standard to say, okay, treated wastewater or reclaimed water should be delivered by a network specialized for treated wastewater directly or distributed directly through this network. And this brings us to another issue on the reuse about the scale, like Peter mentioned, about the economics, but also the scale itself. Should it be centralized or decentralized? Because it is a big concern now to do a decentralized reuse practice where you are treating the wastewater on a spot, on farm level, to deliver it and ensure a high quality without any further contamination due to illegal discharge, or contamination may happen due to the transportation of treated wastewater to the farmers? Or should we make it for the economic visibility and financial viability a centralized one? So I would say it is location specific, purpose specific also. Why are you reusing? And what are the drivers behind the reuse? It also matter in the planning and scale itself and on the delivery mode.
Thank you. And okay, so my next question, we start with Dr. Luna, Dr. Peter, and then back to Dr. Hadil about, at this situation, we have a situation on hand right now. How can we scale up treated wastewater reuse in the region, from infrastructure perspective, from a financial economic perspective, from a socio-cultural perspective? How can we achieve this scaling up in the next years? So we'll start with Dr. Luna, please.
Thank you, Mohammed. For us in Jordan, the strategy focused on improving the infrastructure by connecting more people, because it's around 65% of population in Jordan that are connected to the sewer system. So the major work or the aim of the ministry is to increase this percent by employing or doing or arranging funding to cover the infrastructure to cover more people. Another issue is also the ministry invests really in upgrading the quality and the treatment type in many treatments. Because of this, you saw that 60% out of the 33 treatment plants are employing activated sludge treatment, which is a very fine or a very good treatment option for the removal of contaminants, organics, heavy metals, everything. And really the quality of the treated wastewater that is out of these treatment are very good and reasonable for the work. And because of this, we are testing this quality and trying to modify it in research, so maybe we can, step further in future. I don't know when to go out from the restricted agriculture, because of the the scarce conditions and the continuation of the drop of the available water resources in Jordan. And the high population that we reach, now we are around 11 million, so almost doubled in 3-4 years or 5 years, let's say, along with climate change effect that is really very adverse for Jordan. So I hope that it will be the kind of the work in future.
Okay. And from a financial / economic point of view, my question to Dr. Peter, to Dr. Peter this time.
Yeah.
How do you see the scaling up? You have mentioned, you mentioned the tariff system, and tariff system is very like a huge debate about tariff, even for water supply in the Middle East. And also looking at here one of the questions that regarding the difference between the need for water and the capability to pay for that water, and the question say that probably there is a demand, but there is an inability to pay. So maybe the equation is not about that there is no demand, but the tariff or the cost is increasing. That's why you have the drop in the number of people who are paying for this source of water. But and of course, with putting in mind the energy cost that also increasing. And how do you see within this context the scalability of treated wastewater?
Yeah. I read the question already of Ms. Delphine. On purpose, I presented a little bit maybe extreme point of view, pure how economists look at this problem. I fully recognize that there's also the social reasons that should be included when you discuss tariffs. But I made a point in my presentation because I sincerely believe that, and I've seen it in quite a few cases, that if there are other sources available, fresh water, cheaper, farmers have no incentive to switch. And you should have a little, I'd say, a little pressure, not too much, of course. You don't want to squeeze people, but you want to put them a little bit in the right direction. And also to be realistic, there was another question: can't we convince farmers by pointing out that there are valuable nutrients in the water? And yes, that could be, but again, from practice, nutrients, for instance, nitrogen, is very often removed from wastewater, because if you do not remove it and you put this water in a storage reservoir, you get all kinds of problems. So you have to remove it for other reasons. And so that is also the technological challenge to find treatment technologies that recover the nutrients, take them out, for instance, struvite precipitation or growth of algae, take out the nutrients and supply water without nutrients to the farmers, and also supply them with sustainable fertilizers so that they can decide exactly how much nutrients they want.
So let's also, like, this point is really as you mentioned, is need a lot of discussion from an economist point of view, but also it goes also hand in hand with economy, politics and policy, which is I will try to manipulate one of the questions to meet my interest. And the question said that from a political, do you say there's a political or policy window to scale up treated wastewater use at this moment, this like era of scarcity that we see, and why we have this window, if there is a window at all? Let's start with this is for all the speakers. Let's start with Dr. Hadil.
Thank you, Muhammad, very much for the interesting question. Yeah, for sure. There should be a window for the economic policy and regularity framework. So we have to establish first a supportive policy and regularity framework that promotes incentives for the reuse, which include kind of clear guideline and standard about the water quality, the main concern for the farmers and even for the consumers who are consuming crops irrigated by treated wastewater. Is the water irrigation used up to a good standard with a good quality? So having a clear guidelines about the water quality, identifying the suitable application for their reuse, and streamlining, kind of permission process, like this quality is really sufficient for this, and the policy and regularity framework is a dynamic process. You cannot develop a standard, for instance, for reuse and say, okay, it is a safe standards and it will ensure an optimum and safe reuse, and then that's it. It is a dynamic process. Emerging topics, pollutants are coming every second, not every day. So by having on hand first this dynamic and regularity framework established will ensure a public acceptance and confidence on the reuse practice. Then it comes after the infrastructure developments, the technological advancements, and everything, partnership, training, capacity building, and you can easily start reshifting the economic incentives, and for sure you will have the monitoring all the time.
Thank you. Dr. Luna, what do you think? Do we have a policy window to adopt a large-scale treated wastewater use in the region, and if yes, why we do have this window?
I think it's a must that we have to advance the work of treating more wastewater, because especially at least for Jordan, we know that it is our future, because we don't have other resources. So it's a must for us to explore more in treated wastewater and increase the as I said, the percentage of people connected and number of treated wastewater plants and modification of the treatment by itself. But this for all countries, this needs a very intensive work, to get to attract donors and money or other banks or who can really develop or help countries to develop this sector very much. So I think every country has its own situation or themes or whatever, but the need is necessity for everybody.
And for you, Dr. Bister, how do you see it?
I very much agree. What I know about Jordan, it's indeed there is no other option. The only other option would be seawater desalination.
Yeah.
Because to get the water balance okay for the country. So it also depends on the cost. What are the costs for seawater desalination? How will this develop in the next decade or so? Will those costs go down? I think at the moment it is still cheaper to recycle treated wastewater for agriculture or even for other purposes. Is still cheaper than going for seawater desalination, but that may change in the future depending on the technological development.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions still on different aspects, from governance to infrastructure to treatment technologies, but I think we have limited time. So probably we can just close up with one reflective questions that we hear the answer from all of you. And this one is more like having a treated wastewater as a resource in our water budget in the different countries in the region means that we will have different sources of water to supply to customers or to end users. The question is who will take what, and how to ensure equitable distribution of the different resources. Who will take the fresh water? Who will take the treated wastewater? And how to avoid socially, politically, and imbalance, if I would say like that. So please go ahead. This time, let's start with Dr. Luna.
But can you repeat again? I had a problem in hearing.
So my question is, with different sources of water to supply to the consumers or to end users, farmers, and so on, who will take what, and how to ensure that we have equitable way of distribution of the different water sources, like fresh water, so treated wastewater. How we can decide who will take the fresh water and the treated wastewater?
You know, in fact, as we discussed and Peter discussed, in Jordan, we don't have options, you know, to dig more in fresh water because we already our resources are really exploited, you know. So as Peter said, Jordan now depends mainly on rainfall harvesting projects and implementing a water tank or a water well in every house, especially in urban areas. Also, we depend on the future of the waste water, and we depend on the desalination because this is our options. And the desalination, as Peter said, it is a very expensive project, and Jordan could not go with the Dead Sea, Red Sea project. So now we converted to the local carrier, and Jordan is trying to find fund, you know, to achieve the first or the second step of having 300 million cubic meter desalinated water. And I think this depends on not on our perspective, but it depends on policy, and we have a committee and we have decision makers who's gonna, you know, arrange all this scenario regarding this extra water. But at least for the resources available, everything is already arranged. This is concept. Yani in Jordan and in other countries, we still have the ownership of the water resource, and this is very important and very risky because it can create all the time conflicts between people in different areas, because as they own the resource. So there are a lot of problems and troubles with the ministry really dealing with every community in Jordan. But I think they are maintaining and they are achieving their work.
Yeah, I believe you mean the traditional water rights,
Yes.
especially in the tribal systems like Jordan. So back to Dr. Peter, how do you see it? How we can go through this really fine line of equitable distribution of different resources?
I think the fresh water should go to the city, households and also industries. And only reclaimed water will be available for farmers in the future. I think in countries, water scarce countries, there's no other choice. But it also puts a responsibility on the city to produce, let's say, clean wastewater. Because organic matter, nutrients, we cannot remove that. But it's the responsibility of the city to make sure that there is no emerging pollutants in the wastewater. Because that is a problem that can be tackled only with very expensive technology, which is not affordable. So medicines, heavy metals, organic micropollutants, it's really the responsibility of the city to make sure that that is tackled at the source of the pollution.
Okay, how do you see it, Dr. Hadil, and the last word?
Yes, thank you. Actually, it is a very, I would say, open question. But, you know, if I would like to answer idly, I would say we need engagement decision-making process where we engage all stakeholders to make the decision. And everyone should be on table, involved, all stakeholders, farmers, consumers, community. And it is a very big and open dialogue. If you are asking about my intention or my personal opinion, I would say, yes, it is important to allocate the freshwater resources to domestic uses, but it is not fair to flush toilets with fresh water. So it is kind of combination. You have for drinking purposes, yes, for sure, domestic should take the freshwater supply, but not for flushing toilets or other domestic uses as well. So it is kind of integrated management approach for the water resources. This is what I would say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think very insightful discussion with all the speakers. I enjoyed it personally. Hope all the attendees, participants enjoy the discussion. I would like to apologize if we couldn't present all the questions due to the limited time, and yeah, back to Long to the final part.
Yes, thank you very much, Mohammed, but also thank you very much our panelists for a indeed useful and interactive panel discussion. I'm sure many of us have got inspiring insights and practices for wastewater treatment and reuse, and hopefully those are applicable in your own context. For your reference, we will also share the recording and the slides from this webinar with everyone afterwards. We thank the DUPC2 program for organizing and supporting this webinar series. For the Water Channel, we would like to invite you to join our water community at the website TheWaterChannel.tv, where you will find the largest live collection of water-related content on the internet. Please remember to subscribe to our future webinars also, and I hope to keep in touch with all of you. Thank you very much and have a good day further.